Hello, good night, and welcome to Mindful Live 532. I am your co-host, Nathan Springer, joined by the beautiful host this evening, tonight. What is your name, beautiful host?
Yola Springer.
You had to double check. All right, tell the people laters. Bye.
Bye.
I know I'm good at it. Yeah, as I trim today by Amigo, and he say so and so his leader he hopes that the camps has the capacity to take him out. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Some of that is what we're going to be getting into, because as I said from the very jump this week, at the start of this week, I said this all looks like a propaganda battle to me, and Venezuela with its left-wing style of politics is very familiar with the propaganda style of things. Let's say Veni do decide to strike, who helping us? Full this lead to a full-scale war can TTDF handle? Malcolm Lewis, Venezuela will not attack us like that. That's not in their best interest. I don't see that as being in their best interest. I saw an article, I don't think I pulled it up in the list, but I saw an article where a defense expert, a military expert, was saying the same thing also. It's not in Venezuela's best interest to attack us. But as I said on the jump of this, if the accusations against Venezuela are accurate, that you're saying they are a narco-terror state, then there are other ways that they could affect us that isn't a direct military strike. But a direct military strike is basically the surest way for Venezuela to lose everything in this. So I am not extremely paranoid about that, and I don't think even the words of our Prime Minister would have a massive effect on that one way or the other. Shazam said even the Venezuelans not a fan and want him to retire. Sort of as scams can't even take sealats. You have 2 kids because that's not the baby from the other day. No, I have two. One is a baby and one is that. We need Kush. Stop the aggression, please. Zero Effect says. Well, I don't think it's Tanticam's aggression that affecting that. I think that's the US out there on a whole. And the thing is, maybe that might work out to the benefit of the local farmers. What I was reading in the article when I read about that, they said basically all that was selling on the local market was a bag of foreign kush, a bag of foreign stuff. It seemed like all was coming from Colombia. So if it seemed like every block in the country was selling this one source of vegetation, somebody was locking the whole scene and forcing the whole scene. I don't believe by coincidence every single place in the country selling one strain of vegetation, and not even anything that is planted local is even on the market. So who knows, that might bust up that market. Whoever is the big boy that was locking that, well, he is in a bit of a pickle right now. His fishermen are struggling out there. So we'll see how that all goes. But I don't think the US would be shooting down ships coming from St. Vincent. Men complaining about prices like their children using it. Exactly. Listen, you're talking about a vanity recreational drug. If it's expensive, well, that's kind of what it's supposed to be. Well, you talking above my pay grade. I don't know about that. I don't know who is it. You say that like it's a OPEC scene there. Abdul, that is you? You say that like it's a OPEC scene going on there. The mafia holding back to artificially increase the price when they want and stuff. I ain't know about all of that. But as I said, it seems to me that it's a propaganda game they're playing. Well, there I got my answer. It seems like it's a propaganda game they're playing there. And that's what I said. looking at what Venezuela is currently doing, they seem to be running a propaganda mission on our prime minister, and we will see how well she takes it in the long run. And it seems like it's being, because the nature of propaganda is newsworthy. By the very nature of what it is going to be newsworthy. And you know, I've seen some people complaining that the media is playing into the opposition and playing into the Venezuelans, and they're against the prime minister and they're traitorous. Not really. The media is doing what the media is doing. Sir, zero effect. Sir, I don't know nothing about what you're talking about, eh? Where that allegedly located? Where's the alleged location of that alleged pharmacy? That pharmacy. Let's jump into some news. Library. What's the first story? Yes. So the Venezuelans are protesting our prime minister on the streets of Venezuela. Venezuelans denounce PM Kamala in street protests. Crowds of Venezuelans have taken to the streets of Caracas and other Venezuelan states to denounce Prime Minister Kamala Vicesa following the Venezuelan government's declaration of her as a persona non grata and the suspension of all gas agreements with the twin island nation. Now, let's think about this for a moment. Let's think about this for a moment. Why would Venezuelans be protesting our prime minister on their streets? Our prime minister has no real say on the strikes going on out on the borders of Venezuela. Our prime minister isn't ordering those strikes. It's not our military doing those strikes. So why are they protesting her? You know what that's like? You know, the bad man walk up and bust a slap on you. Slap the spit out your mouth. And you ain't say nothing, but somebody chuckle, somebody laugh, some onlooker laugh, and you're running up by he to start a cuss and a rabs by the man who laughed. Like, okay, maybe the man shouldn't have laughed, that's not a polite thing. But it's not he who slapped you. Why you rabsing the person who laugh and not the person who slap you? Like, fair, Tanti Cam say some out of pocket things. I agree. But you're protesting her like she has something to do with the ending of this. That's why I say it's a propaganda campaign they're running on her. That is precisely what this is. Because these aren't organic protests. They aren't organic protests in Venezuela. They are not organic protests in Venezuela. That is an authoritarian dictatorship. So those protests would be organized and promoted by the regime. So this is basically a sign of what they want. And I said this yesterday, I've been saying this all week. It's amazing. It feels like I come back in here with perfect prediction. Because this was exactly what I was identifying and what it seems to me, what it looks like to me. Because they aren't actually angry at CAMS for any military facilitation. It's not about military facilitation why they're angry at her. Because there isn't any military facilitation that we have done that is affecting Venezuela yet. Like all this talk about the USS Gravely and stuff. The United States does not need Trinidad as a staging ground to launch strikes on Venezuela. They have their carrier coming anyway. the US mainland is right there. I am certain they have missiles that could go from the US mainland straight over to Venezuela if so interested. So they cannot actually be angry with our Prime Minister over any kind of facilitation of the military. There isn't really any of that is affecting Venezuela like that. What I presume they're angry at is look at war in the modern context. Look at all of the military conflicts around the world. They are actually fought in the media. Wars, modern wars, are fought in the media. Israel came out of that conflict having done all that damage and killed so many people, feeling nearly like they lost that war because they couldn't get through it all they wanted to do because they lost the war in the media. So what I think the Venezuelans are actually angry with our Prime Minister about is, as I've been saying all week, she is giving the United States strong points in the media war. Right now, if you look at US media, right now the US media isn't using this Venezuela issue as a main whipping post for Trump. And I would think part of the reason is because the small island, poorer neighbor of Venezuela is an extremely vocal support for it. And that's what the Venezuelan regime is upset about. We are giving the US the narrative protection to do it. And I believe that to me, that's what it seems like where the vexation really lies. Because there isn't any military facilitation that is actually happening like that affects Venezuela like that. Let's look at it. There aren't any natural protests in Venezuela. Venezuelan activists urges Trump to end Maduro's rule. She's legitimizing the US actions, yes. Venezuelan activist Yesenia Gonzalez says she supports US intervention in Venezuela by any means necessary and believes US President Donald Trump will end Nicolas Maduro's rule and bring justice to her people. I have confidence, she says. Very soon we will be celebrating democracy in Venezuela. Asked if she favors a US-led regime change or one driven by Venezuelans, Gonzalez was emphatic. We left it to the Venezuelan people for over 20 years and they persecuted and starved us. He allowed criminals to run rampant, and if people protested, he jailed them. Speak against Maduro and you will be persecuted. Gonzalez accused Maduro of severe human rights violations, suppression of free speech, and referred to his administration as a dictatorship. Maduro is a criminal dictator. I believe he's weak now. It's only a matter of time. Like Trump, Gonzalez questions the legitimacy of Maduro's presidency, saying he did not win the July 28 election. He is an illegitimate president. She believes the Venezuelan embassy in Trinidad should be closed, describing it as illegal and illegitimate. Same thing Spanish say as he lining me up this evening. He say you can't talk bad about him. Yeah, Shazam. Something I regularly do in our field where, sometimes I hire some of the Venezuelan immigrants and stuff. I regularly like to have conversations with them. It's either they're very nervous about talking about politics when it comes to Maduro, like they feel like you might be a spy or something, so they're very, very shy to talk about anything, or They hate the man guts. I have never met a Venezuelan in Trinidad that speaks nicely about Maduro. Never, not once. And I've met some who said they were even in the Guardia Nacional. So they were part of the military and they still hate him. There was a guy who used to work with us for a while, and he used to relate to me. He was a part of the military, the Guardia, and he basically ran black market food supplies. He was running black market food business until they shut him down, and well, that's no more. He is a dictator, Zero Effect says. Explained to me by the gas attendant, they want a US invasion to oust Maduro. Yes, there is quite a bit of Venezuelan support for the US actions. But they love Hugo Chavez. What makes Chavez different? I don't know if they love Chavez like that. But Chavez was earlier on. Some of the effects of what Chavez did are only now being felt. So I think some people may hate him in hindsight now. But in the moment when he was flush with cash and just dancing around spreading the cash, it felt good. So obviously he wasn't as hated back then. But the long-term effects are being felt now. So I don't know necessarily how many Venezuelan expats may necessarily love Chavez like that still. Sometimes I wonder if our politicians have a hand in encouraging Venezuela leadership. Well, as you say that, let's go to the next story, because it could nearly seem so. Yesenia spoke about this. Asked about opposition leader Penelope Beckles hosting Venezuela ambassador Alvaro Enrique Sanchez Corderun at her office on October 28, she said, "That is not right. They are illegitimate officials. Maduro lost the election. He's an illegitimate president. The embassy should remain closed until our president, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, takes over and Maria Corina Machado, opposition leader, becomes vice president." Despite growing geopolitical tension, Gonzalez said U.S. intervention will soon help rebuild Venezuela under new leadership. Venezuela ambassador visits Penny, discusses recent issues. A day after Venezuela suspended gas agreements with UNC government and hours before it declared Prime Minister Carmen Pérez persona non grata, opposition leader Penelope Beckles yesterday received a courtesy call from Venezuela's ambassador to TNT. Yet, I hated when the UNC was in opposition and they used to write letters. They used to write letters attempting to go around the government, to bad talk the government with foreign nations. I don't like this. I really don't like this. And I think this is a poor showing. Well, karma, be that as it may, that's on the politicians. I'm talking about as a citizen of the country. I don't care for karma to be swinging back and forth to politicians and damaging the country in the meantime. When she was opposition leader, yes, I remember that. But still, that wasn't even the same thing as this. That wasn't even the same thing as this. I think this is a poor showing. I think this is a poor showing. I think this is borderline treasonous. What was the meeting about? Speaking about current issues, they said. I don't like this. I didn't say treasonous, I said borderline. I don't think so. This isn't the right move for me. This isn't it. This isn't it. And my point is, I did not like the UNC's go wrong the government actions. And I'm consistent in that I don't like it when the PNM did it. I am not disagreeing with all of that, you know. I am not disagreeing with all of that. I am just holding consistent to it. I am holding consistent to it. If you are a part of the political system, if you agree to be a part of the political system functions away. There's a leadership. You are not in that leadership position. What surprised me is that the Caribbean remained silent when Venezuela wanted to annex 70% of Guyana. No, they didn't remain silent. Now, they may not have been as vocal, but they didn't remain silent. That's not 100% true. There was a bit of talk about it, and there were discussions, and I believe they had a whole summit met somewhere. Where did they meet? Was it Dominica? I can't remember where they met, but they met. UNC, I'm late, but what's your opinions on I'm late. Sorry. Political culture, I guess. The PNM supports Maduro and they don't hide it. And here's the thing. I don't think that's a good idea either. I don't think it's a good idea to support Maduro. Now, I think it's a good idea to work with him because he is the leader that is there in our neighbor. And that's the point I have been making from the jump when I said it doesn't make sense to attempt to insult him like that. That sounds like a nonsensical thing on the diplomatic end. I think we were supposed to be looking, and I've said this over and over, look at Guyana. Guyana has just cause to really hate Venezuela, but Guyana hasn't been saying that that India is going to nuke Venezuela for them. Those are insane things to say. But isn't Maduro a dictator, and isn't it the best interest for him to be removed? Best interest of whom? And here's the thing. Is it the responsibility of every nation to get rid of every dictator around the world? Because here's the truth. Many countries are run by dictators. Do you think the USA will take him out? I don't think taking out Maduro will be the first option. Usually what many countries like to do with things like that to attempt not to destabilize too much is put him on a flight and send him to a nice long exile out in Russia or something like that. OPM seems to have some kind of deal with the US for access to that gas. It would sure seem so. It would sure seem so, Mr. Sword. But as I was saying, the US president is a deal maker. He can change that deal. Because as it stands, maybe we provide a good bit of rhetorical cover for the US in their actions right now. But as I've said, Maduro possibly can offer them something better. I think the USA won't take out Maduro because they are leveraging him for his oil and gas. Then it's not Maduro's oil and gas. Maduro doesn't own any oil and gas. It's the country, it's their countries, and they have a bureaucratic system. So I think they could get rid of Maduro and still get access to that oil and gas. I think the PM is playing well with the geopolitics, but sometimes a bit too extreme. I don't think she's playing well because her main job in this is the diplomatic side of it, and the diplomacy is being run horribly. As I said this yesterday, I don't think any government that came into power in Trinidad and Tobago would have done any different actions in regard to this conflict than the UNC government has done. What actions have the UNC government done? Like the government made a decision and made XYZ happen. What have they done? That USS Gravely that's parked in our port, you think any other government in power would have stopped that ship from coming? Well, I mean, we have defensive agreements with the US, Joy. And as I keep saying, I just don't think it's in anybody's best interest to just attack Trinidad like that. But yeah, so I don't have any real criticisms for her actions when you look at the situation that Trinidad and Tobago is in. But my criticism is for the words. That's where the difference is. But are we in a situation, if we damned if we do or damned if we don't get involved? You aren't getting my point, Nugget Snugger. You aren't getting my point. I am saying I don't think any government would have been able to distance themselves from US involvement. But your words could have been very different. Because now you have made yourself and Trinidad, to some extent by proxy, an enemy of the Maduro regime. And that was unnecessary. That wasn't needed. As I said, Guyana, who has justifiable reason, that Maduro regime wants to take 2/3 of Guyana landmass. But Guyana still isn't speaking like that. Guyana still isn't speaking like that. It ain't working out too good for Ukraine, who has actual resources. Trump ain't loyal. Listen, Ukraine is complex. Ukraine is a complex situation. Ukraine, to some extent, Ukraine looked for their trouble. Ukraine could have, and it's actually a case in point to some extent. Ukraine at one point in time with their previous president was playing the both sides. Ukraine is on, I believe the Ukraine means the borderland. It's basically the borderland between Russia and that European whole Western front business. Now, ever since it has been known Russia wants a bit of buffer between them and NATO. NATO basically was made to fight Russia. Ukraine was that buffer. As that buffer, Ukraine could have played both sides, and they were doing that. They got favor from the US and NATO, they would get favor from Russia, and they would kind of sit in between and ride the fence. Now, allegedly, some people say allegedly it was a CIA-led coup d'etat, so some people say, got someone installed into the Ukraine who then decided to throw all of their eggs more into the US basket, go down in the direction of the United States way more, and actually attempt to join NATO too. That one wasn't going over well with Vlad, and voila. How can our PM smoothly come out of this trouble? There are various ways she can smoothly come out of this trouble. One, the easiest and most straightforward as it seems, is if Maduro is ousted from power and a US-backed, US-favorable regime gets in, she will be in high favor status, very high favor status. She could even find herself part of a transition committee. because you know they do those things sometimes. Some kind of transition committee appointed with Caribbean experts and leaders and Venezuelan expats to take Venezuela in the proper direction as they change over regime. And who knows, she could end up inside of a transition team and lead Trinidad straight into the land of milk and honey in the future, and land this whole slip on a banana peel into a backflip and a somersault and land on her feet. That is a possibility. So she can smoothly come out like that. She can also smoothly come out by attempting to smooth things over with Mr. Maduro. That, I think, would have to be done now. You can't wait to see how it all turns out to attempt to smooth that over, because I don't think it will work then. Who remembers the Russian spy ship docked in Trinidad 2018? The former PM was playing proper diplomacy. I remember that. And we were flirting with BRICS. Even though I remember saying back then, I don't think we are ever going to actually enter BRICS. But we were flirting with BRICS. And it's like what we did with the CCJ. We have the CCJ office down here, the main place, the main building down here. And we aren't even a member of the CCJ. Why not? Why not play all sides? Because at the end of the day, your goal is to seek the best interests of Trinidadians. Not of any other place, not of any other ideology, just Trinidadians, the best interests of Trinis. We were speaking about that earlier, Poon. PM signs major foreign policy shift. TNT looks beyond CARICOM. After accusing CARICOM of betraying Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Prasad-Bissessar says her government will now look to significantly realign its foreign policy with a focus on countries outside of the region. Yesterday, Prasad-Bissessar reiterated that she does not view CARICOM as a reliable partner and said that over the next couple of years, there will be a significant realignment of this country's foreign policy. Here's the thing. How many other countries want to do trade with Trinidad? Like, they're anxious to do trade with Trinidad. Because what CARICOM would have been partners of convenience because they are our neighbors. To get a useful deal from someone who is 300 times the distance away, you really have to have something to offer. That's kind of the point I was making. So, what do we have to offer other nations that would make them jump at the opportunity? And here's a reality. We were never closed from other nations. Other nations always had the opportunity to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. Being a member of CARICOM didn't exclude that possibility. So why weren't they investing all along? What's going to change now that's magically going to make them invest now? It's not like we were holding up investments so that we could stick with CARICOM. A friend of Trump is an enemy by proxy to many nations of the world now. I disagree. Which nations in the world would hold you as an enemy if you are a friend of Trump? Name them. Pakistan plays geopolitics the most, they play all sides. Nah. I would say the best player of geopolitics right now, the gold medalist par excellence, is Qatar. What is the Qatari population? Qatar population 2.8 million. 2.8 million people. And Qatar is on every side of every issue. Al Jazeera has from the most traditionalist, hardcore Islamic content all the way to AJ Plus that is on the cutting edge of the wokest woke extreme progressive liberal style of politics. They have it all on all sides. Yes, the Hamas leaders live here, but also we are okay with dealing with Israel if necessary. All sides. Al Jazeera, some might say, is one of the chief media responsible for putting out alternative narratives than the US accepted narratives. Let's put it like that. But nonetheless, the biggest US airbase outside of US mainland is in Qatar. I think Qatar is the example of that. Qatar is the example of that. And I was listening a while back, I was listening someone talking about geopolitics in relation to Qatar, and like the interviewers attempting to put Qatar into a box, like what is their motive? Is their motive, are they pro-Iran? Are they pro-Saudi? Are they just Shiite or Sunni? And the person was saying they have their own motives. Their motives are their own. It's their own best interest. That's what they're seeking. And I can't give the people wrong for that. Now, the truth is, if they're seeking their best interest, the chances are very high that at some point in time, their best interest and my best interest wouldn't perfectly synchronize. But I can't blame a people for seeking their best interest. That's what a government is for. That's what a government is for. So, I don't think it's wrong to look outside of CARICOM to get the best, but I don't know if it's going to work. Because, as I said, I don't think we were not looking outside of CARICOM all along. And again, here's my issue with this. This isn't something you have to say. Why even announce this? We're moving away from CARICOM. Like, why? It's like those people who at the start of the year announce that they're going and cut off friends and all the people, and me talking to all of this. Okay, you know you don't have to announce this. Just do it. Okay, start looking outside of CARICOM, and then when it's done in the next 3 years, you come back and say, well, have you all seen the amount of foreign investment from outside of CARICOM? We realized since the issue back with Venezuela in 2025 that CARICOM wasn't a reliable partner, and we transitioned away from focus on CARICOM. Simple like that. Simple like that. Why announce it? Why would you announce that? Like, the only thing that could come from announcing that is CARICOM bad blood, as far as I could tell. That's the only thing I could see coming from that. CARICOM leaders saying, oh, well, that is the scene. Well, we going and move away from you first. Like, why announce this? Yes, it does seem like a childish act. It seems like something vindictive. Like you want to say it because you want the words to hurt more than it's actually a matter of doing it. I think that's an unwise move and totally unnecessary. Similar to some of the issues with the Venezuela thing here. We didn't need to speak the way we did. Funny thing is, if we keep backing Maduro and the US removes him, new regime can cancel all deals. I don't think that would have happened. I don't think that would have happened. And that's the next thing. I don't think we needed to back Maduro. But I think even if you were running current deals with the Maduro regime and it changed, I don't think the new regime is automatically just going to throw them out. A whole government has been unnecessary. You know, easy like this. We are now one of those countries that are just running perpetually in a state of emergency. Just curious about your opinion on constitutional reform and the futility of using a colonial model. I don't know. Like, all right, yes, I think there should be constitutional reform. I think we would benefit from reshaping our constitution to work for us better. I agree. I'm not sure what you mean by a colonial model. And the problem with constitutional reform is, what are we going to reform it to? Why is there even a state of emergency? I am not sure. I thought it was a bunch of terrorist allegations, and they caught all of those guys within the first week of the last SOE. But there are ramifications to this. There are ramifications to this. SOE detainees remain lawfully detained until November 2nd. The people who are being held without a court case, they just had their detentions lengthened with no judicial oversight of it. Like, if you aren't affected, you could afford to compartmentalize that and not put that at the front of your mind. But in a country free and fair and democratic, quote unquote, allegedly, for someone to be detained, then have their detention just doubled in time with no court hearing or anything like that, that's kinda oppressive. And that's what a state of emergency is allowing now. That's what the state of emergency is allowing. And I think it is a horrible idea to get the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be accustomed to doing police duties under a state of emergency over a long-term period. I think that's a horrible idea, because that's not how you do policing. That's not how you do effective policing. And many, it seems like most, in fact, of the state of emergency arrests, detentions, etc., don't actually stand up in a court. So you're putting a plaster over a bullet wound, and the thing is, it's going to fester over time. The police aren't always going to just be able to run in people's houses when they're suspecting something. That's not going to be the case. It's going to have to stop at some point, and then what? And that's on that side. And on this side, on the other side, not this side, because I ain't on this side, on that side, the criminals are getting accustomed, obviously, too. The criminals are functioning as normal in the state of emergency now. You know what's interesting? The state of emergency didn't cause the price of the vegetation to raise. It was only when the US started doing what they were doing. If the state of emergency was so effective and all-encompassing, how come they weren't strangling the drug trade? All right, let me jump into the last story for tonight. Some of these stories I really find saddening, saddening. People, I say it, and I mean no offense to the people who live in these areas. But I'm sure if you are a resident of these areas, you also may know this. There are no car deals to be gotten in East Port of Spain at midnight. There are no phones to be bought in East Port of Spain at midnight. There is no grinder hookup to be made with your on the low lover in East Port of Spain at midnight. And neither is there any magical woman waiting to meet you in East Port of Spain at midnight. I'm sorry to be the one to inform you. Woman baits victim to visit her at midnight. Gunmen strike. A man was robbed at gunpoint early Wednesday morning in Port of Spain, and his vehicle was briefly stolen before being recovered by police. According to police reports, the victim drove his white Nissan Kicks to building number 7 St. Joseph Planning's Piccadilly Street around 12:15 a.m. to meet a female friend. Any more coffee in this cup, boy? $12:15 a.m. Sir. There's no love to be had at that hour in East Port of Spain, sir. Like, I don't even understand how the thought process for this works, you know. Your tool will make you go places you wouldn't even normally go with a gun. But oh gosh, your brain have to be able to overpower. Your brain have to be able to overpower that other head at some point in time. Like, okay, meet me 12:15. I understand the excitement. Well, drop a pin now. I will drop the pin when you reach close. Okay, the excitement's supposed to start to drop. Alright, so which general area? Tongue. All the excitement supposed to done. Listen, the only people going to meet the girl in Tongue at midnight is men from Tongue. Exactly, Kim Oliver. This happens very regularly. You know? I could do a segment in my live about this because it happens so regularly. I didn't even have to finish the story. Everybody knows how the story finishing. Upon his arrival, 3 male suspects approached him, one armed with a firearm, and demanded his valuables. Fearing for his safety, the man exited the vehicle and was struck on the back of the head. The suspect took his wallet, which contained his driver's license, bank card and credit cards, and national ID card, as well as his black Samsung A5S phone, valued at $1,800. They also stole the vehicle, valued at $200,000. Police described the suspects as 3 males and 1 female involved in the incident, with an additional unidentified male also reported. A mobile patrol unit later responded to a wireless alert regarding the stolen vehicle. Around 3 a.m., officers located the Nissan Kicks parked along Kerr Trace in the eastern Quarry Laventil area. No suspects were seen, and the vehicle was recovered and transported to the Besson Street police station. See? See. It don't make sense. There's nothing for you like that in East Port of Spain. I'm just sorry. I'm just sorry. It's not there for you. It's not there for you. And this connects so well to the point I regularly make that, when people make this statement like, the poor people, if they have taken away people's money, they go cause crime. I don't believe it's poverty that causes crime. It's crime that causes poverty. It's been vice versa all along. It's the crime that drives the poverty. Because as East Port of Spain keeps doing things like this, I don't know. It seems like there's always a fool being born every day, so they would have some amount of fools that always go down there. But as East Port of Spain residents keep doing things like this, you've just locked yourself out of all of certain kinds of business. Social media has created a person-to-person marketplace kind of dealing that can happen in high-trust areas where I could sell something to a person and they could sell something to me, and we don't need a third party, we don't need a large business to get involved. But if I live in a high-crime area, I've locked myself out of that market. Brother, sir, my wife in my home at that hour, I don't need to go anywhere. All I have to do is go in my bed. I'm not going through that. Never. Could never happen. Never. 12, 15. Quarry. I'll behave on yourself. Nah, behave on yourself. Big people supposed to have sense. I think that's a chicken and egg scenario. If it's a chicken and egg scenario, we know that the chicken makes the egg, and the chicken, there'd be no eggs without the chicken. Yes, we know that the reverse is so too. But in this case, it's one where we're sure where it's coming from. Because you look at the situation and that's what drives it. It's not that the poverty created it, because there are areas that were poor. And if you have an area that is poor, but it is low in crime, it eventually climbs out of the poverty. The areas that stay in the cycle of poverty, they have to link up with crime. Initially, lack of opportunity and socioeconomic issues creates crime. That is wrong. That is wrong. That is wrong. Because I don't have money, it doesn't delete my morals. There are people with no opportunity and poor status in the economy that will never commit a crime. Never commit a crime. And the crime that is committed doesn't have to do with the poverty of the situation. It has to do with the moral integrity of the person. So if you're saying it's a socio-cultural issue, I could believe that. But it's not economic. It's not economic. That's the lie told by the Marxists. It's not economic. There are many poor people with very good morals. Morals degrade quick with mouths to feed. If your morals degrade with mouths to feed, then you weren't a moral person in the first place. But there are many actual moral people, not your fake morality, but many actual moral people who, regardless of their poverty situation, will not steal. And the idea that poverty causes crime seems to ignore the fact that the people oftentimes who steal the most aren't poor. The bosses in those regions haven't been poor for decades. Yet they're still bandits. So a morally right thinking man wouldn't steal to eat if that's the only option facing starvation. A morally right thinking person would plant to eat. They would grow their own thing to eat. It attempts to put you in a false choice. There's pretty much never the situation where your only option is starvation or theft. That is assuming they have the resources to do so. Listen. The poorest people on the planet plant food. If you know, Spankalots, if you know how I despise this style of thinking, because this style of thinking is what is mashing up the developed world. The people who their hearts are so bleeding that their brains aren't getting any blood. They have so much of a bleeding heart, their brains don't get any blood, so they don't think anymore. All the poor people is just, fellas, they don't have no resources. Them fellas, they just need opportunity, They need you to give them work. Boy, them fellas don't have no work, boy, give them work, boy. Sword, and I have work. And it have fellas ain't want the work. Sword, I have work. Fellas ain't want the work. Trinidad ain't have no shortage of need for workers. Don't take the mama guy. Don't take the mama guy. You know I want some of these overly bleeding heart people do? Go and become friends with them bandits and them. See how them fellas live. I have seen, Spankalots, I live in these places, I have seen them fellas lazy. Them fellas waking up 11:30 and they bathing and they brushing their teeth and out with their head rumful looking nowherean till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's how them fellas living. It's lazy, they're lazy. Some of them fellas, the father set them up with a job, linked them up here. All they had to do was go to the people job, but no, they ain't going. Or they go in and they thieving from the people job. And then they come back and they say, boy, them people on your advantage, boy, them men wicked out there, boy. Them just trying to advantage the poor youth, boy. It is not that they don't have opportunity and it's the lack of money sending them into a life of crime. No, it's the lack of morals, it's the lack of training, it's the lack of discipline. That's why they end up like that. That's why they end up like that. So, all this to say, it's the crime driving the poverty. I've given this example so many times. How you going to open a mechanic garage in Beetham? If you open a mechanic garage in Beetham, your customers have to only be Beetham residents. I don't disagree, however, I've seen persons who are genuinely want to do better but are stuck. Generally, the people that I see that genuinely want to do better and are stuck are people who did horrible things first, ended up in a stuck position, and now they're trying to get out, and that's what is difficult. And I agree. There are people in that position that are stuck. But still, that's not the poverty that caused that. It's something totally different that caused that. By and large. There are single mothers who lived a wild life in their 20s and 30s, and now they have 6 children by multiple men, and now they are genuinely trying really hard, but it's very difficult for them. I agree. I'm not saying those people don't deserve help and all of that and all of that and all of that. But I'm saying there are causes to those things. It's not a poverty issue like you could. And the reason I don't like the poverty causes crime is because I know where it comes from. You could look at this and see where it comes from. The Marxists. And the reason the Marxists brought this about is because they have in their belief that if we take enough taxes from enough people and redistribute enough wealth, we can make the utopian society. The problem anywhere is that the people aren't getting enough resources. If you see crime, it's a resource problem. They aren't getting enough resources, so the solution to that is get more resources from somewhere and put it in there to help it. And that's not true. I had opened a car wash in 2008. My own uncle sent people to tax me. You see? So if I am a Beetham resident and I learn a little mechanic skills and my mother have a house in Beetham Gardens, so I could use her garage for free. I could park the cars inside our space for 2-3. I saving up my money. I could buy a little lift. I buy a little engine lift and a little mount thing. I could start. All right, I could go. But I ain't have no money to rent anywhere else. I have to use where my mother house is in Beetham. The day I open that garage, it's only Beetham fellas that come in. If I used to work for a fella in Sawa, in the main in Sawa, and it had customers who really like me. They like how I do my thing. I clean, I nice, I trustable, I trustworthy. I tell them I opening my own thing home by me. They say, boy, I come in by you, boy, I like your thing. I forget about that man, I come in by you. Great. They tell you drop a pin for me. You tell them just now I would send it when they come in. Because you and all know from the time that pin drop, the person like you don't do house visits. You don't do house visits. Come down my side. And that's why the poverty reigns. That's where the poverty comes from. You aren't able to uplift yourself because the crime is surrounding you. And some of the crime bosses and their silly followers would want to keep you in that state because you provide a buffer for the crime bosses. They want you poor and surrounding them in squalor. That's why so many people move out of those communities. That's why so many people move out of those communities. Because the opportunities just can't be found. Why? The crime. Anyway, people, that's all I have for now. I hope you educated, informed, or entertained. This was the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Springer. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll be here again tomorrow. Is Thursday Talks. It would be the first Thursday Talks in a while. So I'll come tune up. We're ready to talk tomorrow. Laters, people. Hold it down. Stay well. Stay good. Stay inside. Outside sketchy. Peace. Bye. Laters.